All right, class, this is this section we're going to talk about kind of the relationship between fractions and decimals and how we can go between whether you have you want to change a decimal to a fraction or a fraction to a decimal. Real simply, we can do this on a calculator, but I'm going to teach you kind of the concept behind it and why and how that works. So to start, fractions are a part of a whole. Decimals are also not quite a whole thing, so they are very they are related, basically the same thing. Fractions seem to be cleaner because sometimes there's decimals that go on forever, so using a fraction when we can, especially with math and going with more complex problems, makes things cleaner in a sense. Sometimes we can't, we have to use decimals, but we also use decimals, I think, to help order things that will make it easier. But so we're going to kind of explore the relationship between fractions and decimals. Okay, so if we are starting with a fraction and then we want to change it to a decimal, the relationship is we basically just divide the numerator by the denominator. So we can do 1 divided by 2, 74 divided by 128, and we can show that. So if I'm going to bring up my calculator and do 1 divided by 2, you should know that it's a half or 0.5, but I say 1 divided by 2, and over here, and we've worked with this before, it toggles back between a decimal and a fraction. So that's easy enough for me to check. I can see that it's 0.5, and I can do that. So 1/2 would be 0.5, and you'll see it 0.5. If you want to put that place value in the one spot to show that it's there, I'm good with either one. So you can call it 0.5 or just 0.5. I will understand that. So again, 74 over 128. So how we would do that? We would just divide 74 divided by 128. So again, going back to your calculator, 74 divided by 128, and that's giving us that right away. So right here, if I wanted to switch back, we've talked about reducing fractions. That's the reduced form of the fraction, but the actual decimal is 0.578125. So that's how we would do that one. 0.578125. And we'll talk about rounding later, because sometimes they go on forever, they don't stop, and we would just round to the nearest decimal place, which we'll cover in a different lesson. Okay, so now if we have a mixed number, all right, I think the easiest way to do this is just come up with the decimal of the fraction, because 2 is the whole. 2 is the whole number in the one spot. So 2 would go on this side of the decimal, and then we would figure out what the decimal is for 3 over 4. It's 0.75, but again, you can just do that. So 3 divided by 4, you can do it on a calculator just to check, and it gives us that 0.75 right there. So it will be 2.75. So again, we have our 2 wholes and then a portion of a whole. Here's our 2 wholes and a portion of a whole. Just like if it was 10 and 1/2, we know a half is 0.5. Well, this would be 10.5. And again, you can just write the 10 out in front of the decimal on the whole number side and then figure out what the actual decimal is from using the fraction by dividing. All right, so that's how we go from a fraction to a decimal. On our handy calculator, it's very easy to go back. You saw how I was toggling it, but I want to explain how we would do that even without a calculator and how we would set it up. All right, so going from a decimal to a fraction, we put the number as a whole on the numerator, which is the top. So if I look at 0.18, I would think of just 18. All right, so that number would go on the top of the fraction, as you can see here. The denominator will be, and I put in quotations, the number of whatever place value the decimal goes to. So if we think of our place values, so if I have 0.1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and I'll just stop there. This would be 10th. That's 10th. This would be 100th. I'll just put TH at the end. This will be 1000th. And then TH. I'm just abbreviating here, but they always have the TH at the end with the decimal. So they start with tenths, hundredths, thousandths, 10,000ths, 100,000ths, and then they would go to millionths with the th at the end. So the number of the denominator would be whatever place value you're going to. So in this particular case, 0.18 goes to the hundredth spot. There's none of these numbers there. So we would put 100 on the denominator. If there was an extra number, say 0.185, that goes to the thousandth spot, then 1,000 would be our denominator. If I just had one spot, it would be the tenth. So in this example, we have a 0.18. So 18 goes on the top, it goes to the hundredths, 100 on the bottom, and then you would reduce, and that would be 9 over 50. So if I had, for example, 0.5, so this is 5/10, kind of up here. We know this is going to be our final answer. But to show the work, if we were going to explain it to somebody else as how it works, it would be 5 over 10, because 5 is a number, and it's to the 10th spot. And then as we reduce that, that would be 1 over 2. All right, so we were practicing for this lesson pretty quick, pretty straightforward. And again, kind of toggling back and forth with our calculator to solve for knowing how to go between a decimal and a fraction. There are some other things. I'm not going to test you on this. This is the main part, but I am going to mention it. There's repeating decimals. Like, how would you do a repeating decimal that is turned into a fraction? So, for example, if you're on your calculator, and let's just do 1/3. Let's clear this. So I go 1 divided by 3. Oops. 1 divided by 3. And you see it just goes on forever. I mean, it doesn't stop there. It just assumes it's going on, and that's 1/3. But one way, if we were going to do that without a calculator, you go to that decimal spot of wherever it may be, and you subtract 1. So 0.333 repeating. If it's repeating, you can say 0.3, and this is the sign that it goes on forever. Well, that 3 goes to the 10th spot, so it would be 3 on the top, 10 on the bottom, minus 1, which would be 9. So 3 over 9. Oops, 3 over 9, which reduces to 1/3. All right, so if it was 0.33, you would go to the hundredths, and so on. If it was 0.89 repeating, for example, so it was 0.898989, you would do 89 on the top, and then that goes to the hundredth, so 100 minus 1 would be over 99. So again, they're not going to test you on this, but just an FYI, I wanted to throw it out there because it's on your notes. So just as a couple practice problems, again, let's do like 7 over 11. So go ahead and pause this. Go ahead and type that in the calculator. Give me what the decimal would be. All right, so if I asked you to do this, you would type that 7 divided by 11 into your calculator. So go ahead and do that. Pause it. Come up with the answer. 7 divided by 11. And it gives us 0.63 repeating. So how I would say that is 0.63. And then I would put a line over the top. All right, let's try another one. So what if I said no calculator and you had to go from 0.57 and I wanted you to write that as a fraction? Go ahead and pause it here and try that one. All right, so 57 is a number that would go on the top. And on the bottom, this is this 5's in the tenths. The 7 is in the hundredths, so I would put 100 on the bottom. Now then you could also check a calculator. You can say 0.57. This is the quick way of doing it, especially on this calculator, 0.57. 0.57. And I could switch back and forth there. So you can see that it's already reduced. 57 over 100 would be our answer.